Hello again. In this session, I'm going to show you how to validate an IP address. If your application asks user to insert an IP address, you have to validate the IP address before the application can use it. If you pass an invalid IP address to a socket constructor, an exception will be thrown. Of course, you can use the catch block to tell the user he entered an invalid IP address, but it's much nicer to check the IP address before using it. Remember that an IP address consists of 4 numbers, each of which contains 1 to 3 digits, with a single dot separating each number or set of digits. Each of the 4 numbers can range from 0 to 255. Here's an example of what a valid IP address might look like. It's very easy to validate an IP address in Java. On the internet, you can find a lot of methods to validate IP addresses, or you can build your own method to check IP addresses. I've written my own method to check the IP address. Inside the method, we split the IP address by dot sign. If the string length is not 4, that means the IP address does not contain 4 numbers, and the method will return false. Then, for each number, verify that the number is in the range from 0 to 255. If the result is false, the method will return false, otherwise the method will return true. Another method to validate an IP address is to use the inet address validator class. This class is not in the standard Java package, so you have to download a jar file using this link. After you download the package and unzip the archive, you can add the jar file to your project like this. Right-click here, Properties, Libraries, Add Jar, and add Commons Validator. And then click OK. And also, you have to import this package. Inside the main method, I've instantiated the inet address validator class. And I'm using isValid method to check the IP address validity. The method returns true if the IP address is valid, or false if the IP address is invalid. If the isValid variable is true, print IP address is valid, otherwise print IP address is not valid. Now let's test the code using a valid IP address. Run file. The IP address is valid. Let's use an invalid IP address. This IP address is invalid because 321 is greater than 255. Run. IP address is not valid.